Room to Heal is a small grassroots therapeutic charity working with survivors of torture and human rights abuses who are asylum seekers and refugees. And we provide therapeutic support as well as practical casework assistance, because members who come to Room to Heal are not only survivors of unspeakable violence and have to struggle with traumatic experiences in their country of origin and journey to the UK, but here in the UK face immense challenges through the UK asylum system and all that goes with that, including with housing, finding a lawyer, accessing education. And so our casework team provide assistance in that domain. So really our approach is very holistic and person-centred in the sense that it takes into account all of the issues and the sort of nuanced and subjective ways that people need assistance. In the words of Helen Bamber, whose wisdom was very important, I think, in the founding of Room to Heal, she said that basically not providing any practical assistance was anti-therapeutic, because how can you give therapeutic assistance to someone who is facing homelessness and destitution, but also really on top of that the threat of detention and deportation, which is sort of omnipresent. People are not going to be engaging with past trauma if there's present trauma, and the asylum system being quite re-traumatizing, really. So the casework team assist in securing legal protection. That's really key. Finding a good lawyer or communicating with that lawyer, supporting people through witness statements, maybe court hearings, and the therapist will write medico-legal reports for cases. So really Room to Heal is with people along that whole journey. It's not like it's a short-term assistance, it's long-term. We're sort of with someone from the moment they arrive at Room to Heal to the end, which is ideally when they have papers and leave to remain and are able to secure a job or start a course. That's one of the most amazing things about working here is seeing that kind of transformation when someone does get their papers and does have the chance then to rebuild their lives, which is one of the main reasons Room to Heal is here, which is to help people rebuild their lives in exile, having lost so much and having then through this system been isolated from many of the support networks that we take for granted. So the casework and therapy are really the core elements of the Room to Heal model, but alongside that we also have a range of more nature-based and social activities. So the therapeutic gardening, the meeting up on a Friday where we cook and eat together, but also we have therapeutic retreats into the countryside, and we do go on community trips to Hampstead Heath or Kew Gardens and have various workshops here in the community centre, maybe creative or physical therapy, yoga, embroidery, printing, that sort of thing. Legal aid cuts were a huge hit to the community because finding a lawyer, a solicitor who isn't at capacity is already a challenge. The immigration law firms are so overstretched, but that's really huge. The legal aid cuts really impacted the community, but also stricter immigration controls and the whole rhetoric around that contribute more to a sense of sort of everyday insecurity and uncertainty. And so the whole post-Brexit and pre and post-Brexit narrative was really unpleasant for our members, and even just this new Home Office policy which has been recently announced, which is where refugees would automatically have been granted settlement after 5 years unless contravening the law in some way, but now after 5 years they'll have to go through the process again, and the Home Office will deem the country of origin safe or not, so it's called the Safe Return Review. So it's very punitive and very unsettling and pretty much anathema to the idea of integration and security once you get your papers. So there's lots of changes and lots of sort of worrying trends in the kind of political landscape that just feed into this sense of insecurity. We've been working for a decade, and Mark Fish, the director, founded Room to Heal in response to his work in Uganda with people who were internally displaced from civil war, and he really witnessed there that the injury was to the community, so any meaningful response to working with people who'd suffered from such immense trauma and displacement would have to involve a community approach. The community was mulling over in his head when he came back to the UK and witnessed that a lot of work with survivors of torture and asylum seekers and refugees was on an individual basis, and that still this need for community was kind of crying out. So he and 5 men who were survivors of torture and human rights abuses began meeting once a week in the Culpeper Community Garden, and that is how Room to Heal began, and it's grown and grown over the last 10 years. So now we're about 80 members, both men and women, from all corners of the world, from about 30 different countries. There's a staff team of about 12 of us, and among that there are therapists and caseworkers and administrators. And then members are what we and members have decided the name because it connotes kind of belonging and a bit more agency than something like client or service user or even patient, because the whole way of working at Room to Heal is very different from a medicalised model, and even really quite different from a sort of provider beneficiary transactional sort of unidirectional model, because it's just so transparent that members really obviously get a lot of support from the staff, but a huge amount of support from each other. And at the core of the work is the group work, the therapeutic support group, which happens every week, and it's in that most of the biggest issues sort of existentially and practically are discussed, and through sharing not only traumatic experiences from people's past, but also what people are going through this whole asylum process, which is full of challenges and obstacles and waiting. People really get a lot of support from each other through that work, and then it's obviously a very community and very sort of sociable lot of work that is done here. So membership is very important. Every Tuesday after the therapeutic work and after a big lunch for the whole community, which is always really delicious and really nice, a group of us go out into the garden, and it's coordinated by a wonderful gardening coordinator, Martha, and Mary, who's a senior therapist as well. There's all sorts of planting and harvesting going on. People have been growing callaloo and sukuma wiki, pumpkins, maize. There's a whole lot of broad beans are growing. It's pretty much all decided as a community. So Martha meets with members to plan everything out communally. And that's sort of also part of this kind of membership model, this kind of idea of everyone taking ownership of the community and deciding collaboratively how we want to do things. Obviously it needs some direction sometimes, but the plants have all been chosen by members, and often it's sort of ingredients that are harder to get or that are kind of expensive. So for example, the Iranian community cook a lot with dill, and so we've had lots of dill, which has been flavouring lots of our amazing meals. One of the local residents who lives here in the estate brought callaloo seeds. So it's been very nice to involve some of the people living nearby. There's a lot of amazing work that happens in that garden, and just how it is a sort of metaphor for the changing seasons. Often people say the garden looks dead or it's a wasteland, there's no life. And then spring comes and it's wow, it's back again. So that's amazing. And then we also have a community garden in Culpeper where we have a small sort of allotment area that members tend to, and there somebody cooks for the whole community, and lots more people come to that. So sometimes you have between 20 and 40 people all eating around the fire and chatting, and it's very magical. We all sit around it, and sometimes we play some music. Some of our members are really talented musicians, and so we often end with a song. In our evaluations, members have always spoken very, very emotionally and movingly about the work in the garden, because it's teamwork, but it's also therapeutically and almost on a spiritual level, people connecting to the earth and watching something grow and having responsibility for something outside of themselves, and restoring hope that comes out quite strongly in what people say about the gardens. Wow, this little seedling has managed to make its way through all this hardship, and now it's a beautiful plant that we can eat and share in the community meal on Friday. That print over there, it's a collaborative screen printing, which shows some of the crops that have been grown here. That's a cocoa pod, which is from Kew Gardens. They were based on sketches that people did in Kew Gardens of plants that reminded them of home or had an association. And in another of the prints there was some rhubarb, which was sort of symbolising this rhubarb pie that one of the older ladies who lives nearby brought for the gardening group, and people were very touched by that. I think the garden is a wonderful locus for these kinds of spontaneous exchanges and seed swaps and recipe swaps and wisdom, because many people had gardens or been gardeners even, or grown up on farms, and this quite brutal and painful disconnect from the home and from the earth was really felt. And so having the garden as quite a central activity has really been part of that, trying to reconnect with the earth and with each other through plants and nature. And the philosophy is really, I think, central to all of the work at Room to Heal. We have some wonderful volunteers, including Jane and Anna and Sally, and then we have general volunteers in the garden and here who help out with a range of different things. Volunteers cook on a Tuesday because members are in groups, in the therapy groups. So after that's finished, we all come into this room and there's this wonderful banquet prepared, which is really a gift. It's very nice. But on the Friday, people take it in turns to cook for everyone. It's not a rota, it's more just whoever wants to will cook. And so that means that pretty much everyone gets a chance to cook each week, and it's really wonderful. The food is superb. The well-being of staff and volunteers is really, really important. It's not just we just kind of carry out work and, that's that. It's that actually to care for each other and feel like an equal staff and volunteer team, then obviously members are more likely to be able to have that approach rather than feeling like there's a hierarchy or a top-down way of working. The really important part of the Room to Heal work is that we're all human, we're all in this, and okay, we haven't been through torture and we've got our passports, so it's very different on a practical level. We also go through longing and loss and love and fear and all of those things that make us human. So we have our feelings meetings once a month, and we have supervision. People need to care for people who are caring. My experience of working at Room to Heal just are really important for me to see that other side of the human spectrum of support and love and care and real integration and belonging, and that is really so transparent in our community here. So when people come to Room to Heal, they are often in a very dark place, not having maybe a support network or feeling any sense of community, but also up against the most horrendous flashbacks and sleeplessness and depression and anxiety which arise from past trauma. So the work of Room to Heal is very long-term and pretty slow, but works on that really deep level of healing and slowly rebuilding trust, which torture and violence seek to break. So the work of Room to Heal is very much about that restoring of relationship and the ability to relate to others and ultimately to relate to oneself, which has been shattered through the process. But I think there's this sort of sense of what's possible when people come together, even if they're from all different corners of the world, but coming together and supporting each other and standing in sort of solidarity. So it's not this idea of kind of charity, but it's of standing with through all these difficulties, and through all of it we're kind of here and we're together, and I think that's really amazing witnessing that. There's this sort of core therapeutic work of rebuilding trust and restoring hope and meaning in life as well. That's one of the things that members often say about Room to Heal is, they provided some light in a time of darkness, or the sense that there's a reason for carrying on, there's a reason for trying to struggle through all of this hardness, and that is through the relational process of the therapeutic work, but also of the community all supporting each other, and the members and staff and volunteers supporting each other, and providing a sense of a family that comes out really strongly in our members' feedback, is that Room to Heal is like a family that has been lost.